Slime Rancher is the type of game that you sit down and tell yourself that you're just going to play for 20 or 30 minutes, and then next thing you know, you look at the clock and you've been playing for 3 hours straight. It's a game where someone's taken the concept of the slime hutch from Stardew Valley, thrown it into a first-person perspective, and expanded it into an entire game. It's just come out of early access a few days ago, and it has an overwhelmingly positive rating on Steam, and for good reason. It's colourful, cheerful, cute, complex, and now for a word that doesn't begin with C, it's also addictive. I think the Stardew Valley comparison is something that's going to be what you'll hear people bringing up a fair bit, but not in a bad way. It's just that if you've played that game, you're going to see a lot of similarities between the two. I think most importantly is the combination of the farming and crafting mixed with the cutesy aesthetic above all else. So in Slime Rancher, you're playing as a character called Beatrix LeBeau, a young woman who's left Earth to pursue a life of slime ranching at a place simply known as the Far Range. All you begin with is a bit of cash, a home to sleep in, and your trusty vac pack. Gameplay-wise, Slime Rancher is deceptively simple on the surface. Your vac pack is pretty much the only tool you're going to be using, and this thing is used for sucking everything up you come across, most importantly, all the various slimes you encounter on the planet. Firstly, you'll come across standard pink slimes, tabby slimes which resemble cats, and rock slimes with rocks protruding from their heads. Later on, you'll encounter more variants like fire, honey, and radiation slimes, and then there's phosphorus slimes which only appear at nighttime and are sensitive to the sunlight. Once you've sucked up a fair bit of these little guys, you're then able to build a corral on your farm to hold them, at which point there's no real limit to how many you can keep in one spot. However, they're not really likely to sit still, and they're actively going to try to escape, mostly just by jumping up and over the walls, which forces you to upgrade a corral with higher walls and potentially even a roof. Then after this, you need to feed them to make them drop plorts, which is what you'll then sell at the market on your ranch to make money, or new bucks as it's referred to in game. Obviously, the more rare slime types are going to drop plorts which are worth more money, and each and every slime has their own dietary requirements, like some slimes like eating fruit or vegetables, then others like meat in the forms of helpless hens and roosters. It's kind of important to keep the different slimes separate too, because if they eat the plort from another slime, they kind of mutate and take on the attributes of the plort they've eaten. So say if a fruit-eating honey slime eats the plort dropped from a vegetable-eating rock slime, that means he's going to then sprout rocks from his back and suddenly have a penchant for both fruit and vegetables. Makes sense? And if all that shit isn't confusing enough, you've got to make sure they don't eat too many other plorts, or else they'll turn into tars, which are these monster-looking things that go around eating everything in the environment. And these tars serve as the only real enemies in the game, able to be killed by shooting them with your water cannon. And then it gets even more confusing. Slimes that are a cross between the two slime types, referred to in-game as Largos, are going to drop both types of plorts dependent on what their combination is. Anyway, after you've fed all your slimes is when you get paid, and to accommodate with the ever-increasing amount of slimes that are going to end up on your ranch, you're going to be constantly building new gardens to create your own fruit and vegetables, and coops to breed your own chickens, in between upgrading Bella's health, her suit energy, and so forth. Not to mention expanding the ranch to unlock new areas. Yep, it's a lot of shit to contend with. Day to day, the pricing of the plorts goes up and down, reflecting real-world market conditions. So one day a fire plort might be worth 90 new bucks, and then a few days later, it's only worth 40. And it's a pretty interesting mechanic. I mean, are you going to hold out on selling all those fire plorts for a few days more, potentially doubling your money, or just selling them now like an impatient asshole? And all of this stuff alone would make the game complex and addictive, but that's not even really scratching the surface of what's on offer. Outside of that setting, Slime Rancher's just got this gigantic world for the player to explore. Most of the exploration's going to come about naturally, as you're obviously going to be venturing into new areas to find the more rare slime types, but it does get complex to the point that I often had to check out a Wikipedia page to help me get my bearings and make sure I wasn't missing anything. Certain areas are locked off with doors requiring slime keys to open, which you can only get from overfeeding larger slimes known as Gordos until they explode from overeating. No, you didn't mishear that. Outside of the ranch, there's a few different zones. First, you've got the dry reef before you eventually unlock access to the moss blanket, the indigo quarry, and eventually the mysterious ancient ruins and the glass desert, both of which are hidden. All of this is surrounded by the Slime Sea, which is just this vast expanse of water that surrounds the game world, kind of serving as the boundary for the environment and killing the player if you're unlucky enough to fall into it. And those moments as you venture into a new zone for the first time, encountering a new slime type, collecting a new fruit or vegetable, or just admiring the art style of your surroundings are the real highlights. You'll really want to quickly catch the new slime types the first time you see them and get them back to the ranch, and it's almost got this Pokemon vibe where you drop everything to rush off and snag them up real quick. In terms of the challenge, I mean, dying in Slime Rancher wasn't something I really ever had an issue with. There's only a few slime types that attack you, and even then their attacks do bugger all damage, and you have to pretty much run into them or be standing still for them to even hit you in the first place. Certain upgrades are needed to get to some of the more out of the way areas, most importantly a jetpack that lets you hover in the air for a short period of time, but there's not really anything in the game that's going to stump you or have you facing any kind of insurmountable challenge. In terms of the gameplay value you're getting out of this game, you're going to be getting tens if not hundreds of hours out of the whole thing. It wasn't until around the 10 or so hour mark that I finally unlocked the lab at my ranch, which allows you to access the science lab. Now this is another mechanic that lets you build all these kind of gadgets and items, from pumps and drills that collect resources through to your very own custom teleporters which you can place anywhere of your choosing. Just buggering around with the science lab could sap up hours of your free time as you gather all the components needed for various teleporters or just work on the cosmetic items to customize the appearance of the ranch. By about the 15-hour mark, I'd finally made it to the Glass Desert, which is kind of the end zone area of the game, but even then I don't think I was really close to finishing it in the slightest. And I still had a series of activities to complete in the area, not to mention there's still plenty of crap for me to do back at the ranch. I guess my only real complaint about Slime Rancher is that it can be a bit of a lonely game at times. I mean, look, again, I'm making a comparison to Stardew Valley, which might be a bit unfair, but it's the game that this reminds me of the most. You know, in Stardew Valley, how you could get married and then head into town and see people meandering around. You never had to walk far to see another NPC, and it made you feel like part of a bigger picture. In Slime Rancher, it's just lonely young Bella hanging out with a bunch of slime. You get email correspondence every now and then, but throughout the day-to-day activities, it's just you by your lonesome self. The planet you're on is widely known in the game's lore as a planet rife for slime ranching, so it would have made sense from that point if they'd included actual NPCs, even if it was just the odd one standing out in the middle of nowhere doing something just to make the place seem less empty. Another thing that kind of chapped my ass was that you can only ever hold 4 items at once, and even then the maximum of that item you can have is 50 once upgraded fully. This makes backtracking really tedious and also restricts how much stuff you can carry a fair bit, which is kind of annoying. It presents the biggest issue when you encounter the gold slime or the lucky slimes, which are these super rare ones that show up once in a blue moon but are worth heaps of new bucks. And the problem is that if all your 4 slots are taken up, which 9 times out of 10 they're gonna be, you won't have time to empty a slot to grab these rare slimes before they disappear, which can happen in seconds. As a result, 3 out of the 4 times I saw these guys, I just couldn't suck them up in time because I didn't have an empty slot. Overall though, this doesn't really affect the game negatively, and it's really just me nitpicking. As good as Slime Rancher is though, you know, it's still a bit of a hard sell. I mean, it's one of those things where you're either going to love it or you're going to hate it. If you can settle into that grinding aspect, you know, maybe put on a podcast in the background once you've gotten into the groove of things and just spend some time working on the ranch, well, it's a really fun game and it's almost cathartic at times. However, some people like a slow burn and others don't. Like I said, I'm at the 15-hour mark and I don't even think I'm close to seeing everything there is to see. And every time I'm back at the ranch, I keep seeing things I want to do or change. You know what I mean? Like maybe I should move the rock slimes over here. Maybe I should plant carrots this time instead of mint mangoes. Or I should really go out and catch more tangle slimes. The list goes on. Slime Rancher's gameplay has a lot of depth and it's largely enjoyable. The art style and visuals are charming and it's well optimized, and every aspect of the game is just highly polished. It was early access done right. If you've been ripping off heads in Doom lately or shooting people in the back of the head in PUBG, then obviously look, this game's not for you, but for people looking for a chill game to zone out with and waste away a couple hours of the day, then in 2017, this is as good as it's gonna get.